This near-death experience story is sent by Mary Caldwell, a 50-year-old woman who once devoted her life to faith as a nun. But what she saw after death changed everything she believed. Mary was an ordinary woman, living her life with devotion and service, until one tragic moment took her to the afterlife. There, she met Jesus, who revealed 3 shocking truths about the world. Truths that will leave you speechless. What did Jesus show her about America's future? What did he reveal about Russia's role in the world? And most importantly, what warning did he give to humanity? Mary Caldwell grew up in a small American town where faith was the foundation of her life. From a young age, she felt a calling to serve God, leading her to join a convent at the age of 18. Her days were filled with prayer, charity, and spreading kindness to those in need. But after years of serving, she felt a deep emptiness, an inner voice telling her there was more to faith than rituals and traditions. By the time she was 45, she decided to leave the convent, believing that faith should be lived, not just practiced behind closed doors. After leaving the convent, Mary dedicated her life to helping the homeless and mentoring troubled youth. She believed faith was about action, not just words. She spent her days volunteering at shelters, speaking in churches, and guiding those who had lost their way. But despite her strong belief in God, she often questioned deeper mysteries. What happens after we die? What is God's true plan for humanity? She prayed for answers, but never expected them to come in such a shocking way, through her own near-death experience. On a normal evening, Mary was preparing for bed when she suddenly felt an unbearable pain in her chest. She struggled to breathe, and within moments, everything went dark. She later learned that she had suffered a sudden heart failure. But in that moment, as her body lay lifeless, her soul was taken beyond this world, to a place where she would meet Jesus himself. What he revealed to her would change her understanding of life forever. Mary never expected to die that night, but within seconds, she felt herself drifting out of her body. She saw herself lying on the bed, paramedics rushing to revive her, but she felt no pain or fear. Instead, she felt lighter than ever, as if her soul had been freed from the weight of the world. Then, a tunnel of glowing light appeared before her. It wasn't just light. It was alive, pulling her forward with a sense of peace she had never known before. The deeper she went, the more she realized she was no longer on earth. As she moved through the tunnel, Mary saw glimpses of her past life. Moments of kindness, moments of regret, and choices that shaped her journey. Every action had meaning, and she could feel the ripple effect of her deeds. But before she could process it all, she felt a powerful presence ahead, one so radiant that she instantly knew who it was. It was Jesus Christ, standing at the end of the tunnel, waiting for her. His presence wasn't just seen, it was felt, filling every part of her with unconditional love. The moment their eyes met, she felt overwhelmed with peace and sorrow at the same time. She fell to her knees, expecting judgment, but instead, Jesus extended his hand with warmth. He told her that her time on earth wasn't over yet, but before she returned, he had something to show her. What Mary saw next was beyond human understanding. Visions of the future, warnings about the world, and truths hidden from humanity. She was about to witness 3 shocking revelations that would change everything. Mary didn't walk into heaven the way she had imagined. It wasn't clouds, golden gates, or choirs of angels. Instead, she found herself in a vast, endless realm filled with light and energy. Everything was alive. Every color, every sound, every movement carried meaning beyond words. It was a place more real than earth, yet untouched by time or decay. But what stood out most was the overwhelming sense of peace. There was no fear, no worry, just pure, perfect love surrounding her. As she looked around, she saw souls moving freely, each radiating a unique glow. Some were rejoicing, while others seemed to be learning, guided by divine beings. She realized that death wasn't the end. It was just a doorway to something greater. But before she could explore further, she felt herself being drawn toward a higher place. Jesus was waiting for her at the top of a radiant hill, his presence brighter than the sun. As she approached him, she felt her soul tremble, knowing that she was about to receive answers she had longed for her entire life. Jesus welcomed her with open arms, speaking directly to her heart without words. He told her that the world was at a critical turning point and that he would reveal things that humanity needed to know. He asked her to be strong, for what she was about to see would shake her to the core. With a simple touch of his hand, visions began to appear before her, visions of the future, the fate of nations, and the deep spiritual battle happening on earth. Mary had prayed to see Jesus many times in her life, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. His face wasn't just seen, it was felt. His eyes radiated infinite wisdom, filled with both joy and sorrow. Looking into them, she understood everything he had ever taught about love, forgiveness, and truth. He wasn't just a figure from the Bible. He was the very essence of life itself. His presence was so overwhelming that she felt her soul bow before him, knowing she was standing before the King of all creation. Instead of speaking with words, Jesus communicated through pure understanding. Every thought, every emotion he shared flowed into her spirit like a wave of energy. She realized that heaven wasn't about rules or rituals. It was about being in perfect harmony with him. The love she felt in his presence was unlike anything she had known on earth. It was the kind of love that healed wounds, erased pain, and brought absolute peace. Then, his expression changed, filled with deep sadness. He told her that the world had drifted far from his teachings, consumed by division, greed, and fear. He showed her the state of the world, and it broke her heart. Nations were rising against nations, people had turned away from faith, and many had forgotten the real meaning of life. But amid the darkness, he also showed her a light, a hope that still remained. He told her that there was still time to change, but humanity had to act fast. Jesus took Mary's hand and showed her a vision of America. It was not the land of faith and freedom that it once was. Instead, she saw division growing deeper, people losing hope, and morality fading away. She saw families broken, communities struggling, and leaders making choices that distanced people from God. But Jesus did not show her this to scare her. He wanted her to understand that there was still a chance to change. He told her that America's future depended on its people turning back to faith, choosing unity over division, and remembering their spiritual foundation. The country had been blessed, but those blessings would fade if people continued down a path of self-destruction. However, he also showed her a vision of hope, people awakening, returning to prayer, and a new wave of faith spreading across the land. America was at a crossroads, and the choice was in the hands of its people. Jesus urged her to share this message, to remind people that faith was the only thing that could heal the nation. It wasn't about politics or power. It was about returning to the truth that had been forgotten. And this was only the first revelation. There were 2 more yet to come, each more shocking than the last. As Mary stood before Jesus, he extended his hand again, and suddenly, her vision shifted. She found herself looking at a vast land covered in snow. Russia. She felt the weight of history surrounding her, as if the land itself carried memories of struggle, strength, and change. She saw its people, resilient, disciplined, and deeply connected to their traditions. But then, Jesus revealed something that took her by surprise. Russia had a spiritual role to play in the world, one that many did not see or understand. Jesus showed her the unseen forces shaping Russia's future. There was a spiritual battle occurring beneath the surface, a war between those who sought truth and those who wanted to control and manipulate. She saw leaders making decisions that would not only impact their country, but the entire world. Some decisions would bring conflict, while others had the potential to lead to unexpected alliances. Jesus did not condemn Russia. He showed Mary that every nation had a destiny, and how that destiny unfolded depended on the choices of its people and leaders. Then she saw something astonishing. A revival was coming, a time when faith in Russia would rise in unexpected ways. She saw churches filling with people, prayers being spoken in quiet corners, and a new generation seeking the truth of God. She realized that even in a land known for its strong leadership and power, the true strength was in its people's faith. Jesus reminded her that no nation was beyond redemption, and that despite the challenges, light was still present. What happened next would determine the future not just of Russia, but of the world. After witnessing Russia's role, Mary felt a shift in the vision. Jesus now showed her a wave of energy spreading across the earth. It was unlike anything she had ever seen before. Millions of people awakening to something greater, realizing that the world they had built was missing something essential. She saw people who had once lived without faith suddenly searching for answers, seeking a deeper connection with God. It was a spiritual awakening, and it was happening faster than anyone could have imagined. This awakening did not belong to any one country or culture. It was global. From small villages to massive cities, people were feeling an undeniable pull toward faith. They were letting go of fear, confusion, and hopelessness, replacing them with trust in something beyond themselves. But as this light grew, so did the resistance. There were forces that did not want humanity to wake up, forces that thrived on division, fear, and control. Jesus showed her that this awakening would not be easy. It would be tested, challenged, and even opposed. Mary realized that the world was standing on the edge of something incredible. If people chose faith, love, and truth, the world would enter a time of peace unlike any before. But if they ignored this awakening, the consequences would be dire. Jesus made it clear this was a moment of choice, and every person had a role to play. She knew then that she had to return, to tell the world what she had seen, and to share the truth before it was too late. Mary felt an overwhelming urgency in her soul. Jesus told her that time was limited, and that humanity could not afford to wait any longer. The world was moving fast, and choices were being made that would determine the fate of millions. People had become comfortable in their distractions, their routines, and their comforts, forgetting the deeper purpose of life. But Jesus was calling them back to faith, back to truth, back to a life of meaning. She saw visions of people standing at a crossroads. Some were waking up, realizing that the world was changing and that they needed to return to God. Others ignored the signs, choosing to continue as they were. Jesus showed her the consequences of both paths. For those who chose faith, there was hope, strength, and protection. For those who rejected it, there was confusion, fear, and instability. It was not about punishment. It was about the natural consequences of turning away from God's truth. Jesus' voice was clear. Humanity needed to act now. There was still time, but not forever. People needed to humble themselves, seek forgiveness, and realign their hearts with God's will. The doors of mercy were still open, but they would not remain open forever. Mary knew that when she returned to life, this was the message she had to share. The world was at a turning point, and every soul mattered in the coming transformation. Mary never imagined she would be shown the world's leaders through heaven's eyes. But as Jesus lifted his hand, she saw them. Powerful figures sitting in high places, making decisions that shaped the lives of millions. Some carried heavy burdens, trying to lead with wisdom and justice. Others were influenced by forces they did not fully understand. But Jesus did not speak with anger. He spoke with sorrow. He reminded her that leadership was a responsibility, and that those in power would one day answer for their choices. She saw that no nation was without fault. Some were driven by greed, others by fear, and others by the desire for control. But she also saw hope. Among the leaders were those who still sought truth, who wanted to lead their people toward righteousness. She realized that world leaders were not just political figures. They were spiritual figures as well. Their choices could either bring people closer to faith or drive them further away. Jesus told her that prayers for leaders mattered. Even those who seemed far from God could be touched by prayer and change their ways. He reminded her that while people often criticized their leaders, they rarely prayed for them. The world was quick to judge, but slow to intercede. If people truly wanted change, they needed to pray for wisdom, guidance, and transformation among those in power. The fate of nations depended not just on policies, but on the spiritual battles being fought behind the scenes. Mary saw America's spiritual state like never before. It was a land of great blessings, but also great struggles. She saw families breaking apart, people feeling lost, and values being tested like never before. Jesus showed her that America had been given many opportunities to remain strong, but distractions had pulled people away from what truly mattered. The country had reached a point where it had to decide its future. Would it return to its spiritual foundation, or would it drift further into uncertainty? Jesus showed her a vision of revival, churches filling, people turning back to prayer, and communities rebuilding their faith. But he also showed her the challenges ahead. There would be trials, but they would serve as a wake-up call. People would have to choose faith over fear, unity over division, and truth over deception. She understood then that America's future was not set in stone. It depended on the hearts of its people. The promise Jesus gave was simple. If people humbled themselves and sought God, their nation would be restored. But it would require action. It would require people to stand firm in their faith, to strengthen their families, and to seek righteousness in all they did. The battle was not just political, it was spiritual, and the time to act was now. Mary had already seen glimpses of Russia's spiritual awakening, but now, Jesus showed her something deeper. Russia was playing a role in the shifting world order, one that many people did not expect. While the world often focused on Russia's politics and military strength, Jesus revealed that there was a hidden battle taking place within its borders, a struggle between darkness and light. She saw people in Russia secretly turning back to faith, gathering in small groups, praying, and seeking truth. There was a quiet but powerful movement happening, one that would influence the entire world. Jesus showed her that despite its historical struggles, Russia had a destiny connected to the global spiritual awakening. It was not about politics, it was about the hearts of its people and the leadership that would rise in the coming years. Mary understood that what happened in Russia would impact many nations, including America. She saw leaders making choices that would either bring unity or further divide the world. She realized that the future was not yet written. It was still being shaped by the prayers and faith of people across the world. Russia, like every nation, had the opportunity to embrace light or fall into darkness, and the world was watching. As Mary stood before Jesus, he showed her a vision of conflict. She saw nations preparing for war, leaders making decisions based on fear, and people suffering in the process. But then, Jesus spoke to her heart, revealing something profound. War was not just a political issue, it was a spiritual battle. Behind every conflict, there were unseen forces pushing humanity toward division and destruction. She saw how war was often fueled by pride, greed, and the desire for control. Nations fought not just over land and resources, but over power and influence. But Jesus showed her that true peace did not come from treaties or agreements. It came from the hearts of people. If people turned back to faith, sought unity, and chose love over fear, wars could be prevented. Mary realized that every person had a role to play in preventing conflict. It was not just up to leaders. It was up to families, communities, and individuals to choose peace in their own lives. Jesus reminded her that prayer was more powerful than people realized. He urged her to tell others that the world did not have to fall into chaos. There was still hope, but time was running out. As Mary absorbed everything she had seen, Jesus told her that her time in the afterlife was coming to an end. She felt a sudden pull, as if she was being drawn back into her body. Before she could say anything, everything around her faded, and she gasped for air. The next thing she knew, she was lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and nurses. She felt disoriented, her body weak, but her mind was clear. She had just witnessed something extraordinary, something that no one would believe. The doctors told her that she had been clinically dead for several minutes, but somehow she had come back. They called it a miracle, but Mary knew it was more than that. She had been sent back for a reason. As she looked around the room, she felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She had been given a message, a warning, and a glimpse of the future. Now, it was up to her to share it. But how could she explain what she had seen? Would people even believe her? She knew that her journey had only just begun. Mary knew she couldn't stay silent about what she had seen. The moment she was strong enough, she began telling her family, friends, and church members about her experience. Some listened with wide eyes, deeply moved by her words. Others were skeptical, questioning whether it was just a dream or a hallucination caused by medical trauma. She didn't let doubt discourage her. She started speaking at gatherings, churches, and community meetings, sharing the message Jesus had given her. People began to listen. Some wept, realizing that they had drifted away from faith. Others felt a deep sense of urgency, as if they had been waiting for this message their entire lives. But Mary also faced resistance. Some accused her of making it up, of seeking attention. Others said her visions were too radical, too uncomfortable to accept. But she knew the truth. Jesus had sent her back to warn people, and she could not ignore her mission. No matter what, she would keep speaking. Mary understood that Jesus had shown her America's spiritual condition for a reason. She saw a nation blessed with abundance, but struggling with division, moral decline, and spiritual emptiness. She saw families falling apart, communities losing their sense of purpose, and people turning away from faith in pursuit of material things. Jesus had made it clear, America's future depended on its people. If they turned back to faith, sought truth, and united in love, the nation could be restored. But if they continued to drift, ignoring the signs, they would face consequences that could not be undone. It was not about punishment. It was about the natural results of turning away from God. Mary urged people to pray for their country, to strengthen their families, and to reject fear and division. She told them that faith was not just a personal journey. It was a force that could transform an entire nation. If enough people chose light over darkness, America's future could still be bright. But they had to act now. One of the most unexpected parts of Mary's vision was the connection between Russia and America. She saw two great nations, often portrayed as rivals, yet deeply linked in ways few understood. Jesus showed her that both countries had the potential to bring light into the world, but only if they chose the right path. She saw that division was being fueled by misunderstandings, political agendas, and fear. But she also saw that people on both sides longed for peace, for stability, for truth. Jesus reminded her that no country was beyond redemption, and that unity could be achieved if people focused on faith rather than fear. Mary called on Americans and Russians alike to pray for one another, to seek understanding rather than conflict. She knew it was not an easy message, but it was necessary. The world was standing at a crossroads, and the choices made in the coming years would shape history forever. Mary understood that her near-death experience was not just a vision. It was a divine assignment. Jesus had shown her things that the world needed to hear, and now she had to take action. She was not a preacher, a politician, or a famous figure. She was just a woman who had been given a message, and she knew she had to share it, no matter the cost. She began speaking wherever she could, churches, small gatherings, and even online platforms. She shared her story with anyone willing to listen, hoping to reach those who felt lost. People from all walks of life began to reach out to her, sharing their own experiences of faith and doubt. Some told her that her story had reignited their belief in God, while others confessed that they had been on the verge of giving up. But Mary also faced criticism. Some called her story impossible, claiming she was making it up. Others tried to twist her words, accusing her of pushing fear. She did not let the negativity stop her. She remembered Jesus' final words before sending her back. Truth would always face resistance, but it must still be spoken. She had no choice but to move forward with faith.